All right, welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to have you with us today because we're diving into something truly fascinating. We're unpacking a text called Life and Death Are Only Images. There is neither life nor death in life by Xu Fang. Now, whether you're a hardcore skeptic, a spiritual seeker, or just, someone who loves a good philosophical deep dive, this material offers an absolutely wild, highly structured framework about the very nature of existence. The main idea here, the author argues that life and death, they aren't opposites at all. No, they're actually a continuous, eternal cycle. We're going to look at how this source material uses everything from historical anecdotes to near-death experiences, and even this concept of spiritual mathematics, to argue that our consciousness literally never stops. It just swaps vessels. Okay, let's dive right into this. We're kicking things off with some ancient wisdom from the Yellow Emperor's Book of the Hidden Talisman, which states, "Life is the root of death, and death is the root of life." The author uses this fantastic visual metaphor of a Mobius strip. You know, that loop with only one surface and one boundary? If you trace a line on it, you eventually cover both sides without ever lifting your pen. And according to the text, life and death operate exactly like that. They're constantly flowing right into one another. Life is death and death is life. You literally can't have one without the other. They are locked into this continuous, eternal loop. So, how does this internal cycle actually work in practice? Well, the text points us to the concept of instinct, and the author uses this brilliant analogy of a chick inside an egg. Think about it. It's been incubating for 21 days. That little chick has absolutely no idea how thick the shell is. It doesn't know if it can even break through, and it certainly doesn't know there's a whole massive world out there waiting for it. But it pecks. It pecks entirely on instinct. The author argues that this innate drive isn't just some random accident. It's pre-programmed. It's embedded into the very structure of what the text calls biosomes, by a much higher form of existence. This instinct is the engine keeping the cycle moving, actively pushing life from one state right into the next. And that brings us to Section 1, the mystery of past lives, looking at the evidence and anecdotes. And this brilliantly illustrates the text's whole approach, starting with the famously documented case of Shanti Devi. Now listen to this. Born in Delhi back in 1926, by the time she was just 7 years old, she's telling her mom she used to live in a city called Mathura. By age 9, the claims get incredibly specific. She says her previous name was Luki, she was married, and get this, she even had 3 kids. When investigators actually took her to Mathura, the story goes that she correctly identified her former husband's cousin, recognized her old house, and even pointed out the guy who would have been her former father-in-law. For the author of our text, cases like Shanti's aren't just spooky little mysteries. They are hard indicators of a consciousness actively carrying over from a previous vessel. But wait, the text points to even more bizarre mysteries to back this up. Take the story of Swarada Mashad. The guy's just out cycling, right? And suddenly he recognizes a house he has never ever visited in his current lifetime. Yet he accurately recounts historical events that happened there decades ago. Oh, and then there's the absolutely wild case of Gaspiel. Gaspiel supposedly wakes up in his own coffin, suddenly possessing the memories of a man named Yaki. And Yaki was a man who died on that exact same day, 35 kilometers away. No way, right? The author brings up these accounts not to force you to believe them blindly, but to argue that we kind of can't just brush off the idea of rebirth when faced with such incredibly specific, documented phenomena. Moving from spontaneous memories to something way more institutionalized, the text details the meticulous process used in Tibetan Buddhism to find a reincarnated leader. Let's walk through how they found the 9th Panchen Lama's reincarnation. First, they start with a search among 17 potential boys. Then they narrow that down to 6. Next, they test them by having the boys try to identify past belongings of the previous Lama. Finally, it all culminates in this highly ritualized process, where names are wrapped in sampa balls and placed into a gold bottle. The name they drew was Wendu Gongbao Chedan. The author highlights this whole multi-step procedure to show that, for millions of people, reincarnation isn't just some fringe theory. It is a highly structured, practiced reality. But hey, you might be wondering, what if you don't remember a specific past life, like Shanti Devi did? Well, the author has a framework for that, too. According to the text, you know that eerie feeling of déjà vu? Like arriving in a new city but feeling this overwhelming subconscious familiarity? The text argues that's actually a hazy memory from a past life where you were all so human. On the flip side, if you've got this innate, deep-seated disdain for human selfishness, or maybe a strong natural pull toward vegetarianism and Buddhism without ever being taught it, the author says that points to totally different origins. In this framework, those traits mean your soul previously hung out in higher realms, like the Thousand-Year World or the Elysium World, rather than just another human life. All right, moving right along to Section 2, near-death experiences, or visions of the afterlife. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the extreme duality of the near-death experiences the author presents. On one side, we have accounts from people who clinically died and came back, reporting this profound, unmatched peace. They're describing moving through a happy darkness straight into bright sunshine, feeling unparalleled happiness in a beautiful place. But then, look at the right side. Total stark contrast. The text also includes accounts of absolute terror. We're talking nightmares, ghosts trying to claim their lives, a literal black tornado, and people just being frightened to death. But the author's main point here? Whether the experience was pure bliss or an absolute nightmare, a clear functioning consciousness is persisting even after the physical body has completely shut down.
And the text shares one specific anecdote that perfectly captures this persistence of consciousness. It describes a patient having an out-of-body experience. They are objectively hovering there, watching doctors desperately trying to resuscitate their lifeless body, while their relatives are literally weeping in the room. But the person going through it, they feel absolutely zero sadness. None. Instead, they describe this feeling of extreme peace as they float away, being gently drawn toward a beautiful, distant place. For the author, this absolutely isn't a hallucination from a dying brain. It's the soul actively, consciously beginning its transition to a brand new vessel.
So if the soul does transition, how exactly does it know where to go? Let's get into Section 3, the mechanics of rebirth and the life bank system. Okay, according to the author's philosophical rulebook here, the universe only contains two truly eternal things, energy and life. Everything else, just a temporary container. The primary absolute rule of reincarnation is that death in one realm is the direct cause of birth in another. For example, if a dog dies, its energy might reincarnate as a human. The dog ceases to exist, making way for the human. It's a one-for-one exchange. The text explicitly states that a single life cannot step into two rivers at the same time. Basically, to be born into a higher realm, your physical body must definitively, fully die in its current one first. So the crucial point is how the author actually explains the cause and effect of where you end up. They use this super fascinating financial metaphor. Basically, think of your life as a bank account. In this framework, reincarnating into a lower form, like an animal, doesn't just happen by accident. Oh no, it requires continuous evil, squandering your energy and literally overspending your life bank savings until you are deep, deep in the red. If you spiritually bankrupt yourself, a lower form of reincarnation is the guaranteed consequence. On the flip side, what about the requirements to totally break the cycle and achieve the highest spiritual state, becoming a Buddha? Well, it demands some extreme voluntary divestment. The text claims it's mathematically necessary to own absolutely nothing. You have to consciously and willingly give up money, status, property, and yeah, even your family. And it goes further. You can never hold on to a concept or get into disputes with people, and you must completely abstain from killing or eating meat. It's the state of absolute, total spiritual neutrality and purity that's required to elevate your consciousness to the highest possible realm. And all of this builds up to our final part, Section 4, the colors of death, where we scan the departing soul. Let's move to the next slide and see how this builds into something wild. The author proposes this fascinating, almost sci-fi hypothetical. Imagine a brain scanner hooked up at the exact moment of death. According to this highly specific framework, the neurons in your central nervous system actually take on different structures and emit different colors right at the end. So, if your brain flashes colorful, boom, you're bound for the 10,000-year world. If it's purple, you're heading to the Elysium world. Red, green, or blue means the 1,000-year world. Now, a white flash, that indicates you're coming right back here to be reincarnated as a human. A faint dark color means a return to the animal kingdom, and a black reading means a direct descent into the netherworld or those frozen layers. It's this deeply structured, almost scientific categorization applied to a purely spiritual concept, which just makes it so fascinating to explore. Ultimately, the author uses the whole shebang, the historical anecdotes, the clinical near-death observations, the spiritual bank accounts, and yes, the colored neurons, to summarize one massive framework, anchored by this quote, "Death is not the end of life." The text argues that what we perceive as the tragedy of death, or even the miracle of birth, are merely ongoing transformations. We are a singular, eternal energy, continuously moving from one vessel to the next. We're forever progressing or regressing based on our actions, but we are never, ever truly ending. Which leaves us with a truly provocative thought to wrap up today's explainer. Based on everything we've just explored from this text, if your current existence is really just a single point on an eternal Mobius strip, what color will your brain flash when it's your time to transition? It's definitely a fascinating framework to ponder, whether you take it as literal truth or just a profound philosophical metaphor for how we choose to live our lives right now. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.